On this episode, we're meeting with Jeanne Panucci, and I wanted to just record this short intro because I listened back to the episode and I just start kind of describing you, and this is why I invited you. And on particularly the audio version of this podcast, it can be a bit confusing, like who are you talking about? Are you talking to me, the listener? And I also wanted to give a proper introduction to Jeanne. I was so glad to meet with her and have this very expansive conversation. And while you're listening, I also recommend you to feel how these things feel in your body. Can you feel some similarities to your experience or something, how it vastly differs? And just, I felt that the central theme of our conversation was embodiment, landing back in the understanding that we are these embodied beings and how that's going to affect our experience, and we're going to experience everything through these beings that we are. So that's why I want to invite you in this episode to really also tune into how the conversation feels for you in your body. Yay! So welcome. I'm so happy you wanted to join me for this conversation, because I had a meeting with you and I really felt your energy, your calm, and it helped to ground me and get me back into my own kind of connection with my own knowing. What do I want to do? And as I've understood it, you also work with guiding others and coaching, and I'm a bit curious to hear a bit more about your story and what you do. And my main intention was quite spontaneously, just I felt like I want to give you a platform where you can share your story and have a bit more of a conversation with you and share it to others. So that's the starting point for me.
Okay. Yeah, actually, so yes, it's true that really my journey has been my life, of course. And, I didn't know where I was heading, starting from, a little kid, but I always had this question that from a young, even 6 years old, I'm pretty sure 6, of like, wait a second, what are we doing here? Why are we here? It confused me, but it was also, I was curious and excited. And so really that is just the underlying current of everything I've ever done. And I also always had this sort of experimental type of approach with life. And so as far as where I'm at now, which is where now I can take my entire life's worth of experiences, which has many, many fun, interesting, and crazy things. And now I can use that for the purpose of helping others be able to get in touch with their essence, really. I mean, the bottom line is that a lot of probably the entirety of my journey, mixed up with some spiritual stuff that happened to me, but the entirety of my journey has always been until I figured it out, but I was always caught up in a little bit of the stories, like in my head, or like I was the seeking feeling that was always there. And, like it was this pull, of course. And now my mission is really to help people just wake up from that so that they can get in touch with who they really are, so that they can live free, literally, inner freedom, do what they need to do, that they want to do, that is connected to their calling. And some people might not, they don't even have to think of it that way. They could think purpose, whatever it is, it's about finally resting in your knowing and not seeking anymore. So that, with all of my experiences, that's really actually all I was ever doing, was getting confused and then figuring something out and then taking the next step. And it just got deeper and deeper and deeper until I basically am like, okay, no, I get it. I would love to help people really feel this and know this.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. That journey from like seeking and just wanting to figure out. I can relate to that a lot, like that feeling of what's going on here? What is this? And just trying to learn and understand. And something I wonder is, when did you feel like you arrived at that point when you were like, okay, like I have now at least something with me that I feel like I can stop the seeking, or I landed somewhere. Like how did you feel that you came to that point? And maybe as guidance for others, that when is it the time to start sharing instead? Because those are a bit like different stages we move through, and it can go in a cyclical process too, I guess. So I'm
Right. And I
curious
do
about that.
believe that, one thing I was caught up in the past about was like that you have to be like completely fully healed of all of your things before you start stepping into the world. And that's not true. For me, and I think it's different for everybody, but for me, yes, there was a point where I was like, oh. And so it was a journey, but so the awakening process, again, I think is very different for everybody. Uh, for me, there was one event that started everything, but then I kind of went back, kind of went back into the seeking, because like it usually doesn't. I mean, some people maybe, but it usually doesn't all happen at once. Where you're kind of like, oh, I get it now. But I was in my early 20s, and I was in college, and I was moved back in with my parents. Who doesn't know that story? And I was really struggling with, at this point, it was this kind of beating myself up all the time. Like it just was so
Mm.
upsetting and frustrating. And I felt kind of like bad. And I just would talk terrible to myself. And I said to myself very strongly while I was standing in the kitchen, I said, oh my gosh, I just need to kick myself out of my body. I need to kick myself out of my body. Like, this is ridiculous. And at that moment, there was a gap. There was actually no thoughts. And there was an awareness of going, wait a second, who is kicking who out of the body? Like, there's two things here. Like, and I recognized that there was the one who was aware that there was a problem and wanted to kick the other out, like get out of my way. And at that moment, that was like my one mini very discernible moment where I had this separation, so that I wasn't all wrapped up in sort of just
Mm.
the like who we think we are. And then it kind of like, and then I kind of like, then it kind of went away, like. But at
Yeah.
that time I found my own spiritual mentor, who's about 15 years older than me. And then it kind of started this relationship where then I had someone helping me and guiding me a little bit as well. And then I was doing all the things, where just reading books, spiritual books, and doing like sound healing things, and just a lot of stuff that kept getting me more information. And alongside of that, my life journey was sort of paralleling this, where I kept switching my careers. Like had a bachelor's in economics, and so I was like in the business world, and did that for like 6 years. And then I felt like, oh, this isn't meaningful to me. So then I got my master's in education, and I taught high school math for 10 years. And I was like, oh, And don't get me wrong, I learned a lot of ego things, like putting yourself out there in front of high school kids. I mean, that'll help you not be all wrapped up in your own stories for sure, because they don't have time for it. And then I did it again with interior design, and then I did it again with spiritual counseling. So like my point is like I'm doing the seeking. So the that was happening, but then the greatest moment that propelled me into even thinking of having a business and serving others was then I had a big spiritual awakening in 2013. And that is a story that I could tell, but I will pause here. But that, um, what happened to me, then it took like 10 years to integrate it. Within that 10 years is when there was sort of just this almost like I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back. I had this contented knowing. And then I started to develop like, okay, how can I serve others so that they can start to understand like who they really are and how to connect to their purpose and things like that. So I would say about 10 years ago was when I was really like, okay, I get it.
Oh, wow.
So
It's so fascinating how those journeys go, and that moment when you had like this kind of dual perspective where you were kind of swept out from those, maybe that daily drama or tunnel vision of just being here and seeing like there's some presence or something beyond that, or that's how I understood it,
yeah.
that moment. And I had a similar experience, but in a different way. I had it through a dream where I got an example of how life could feel, and you're not actually living your life that way or to the fullest. And that's also a kind of weird thing, because you're kind of feeling that the dream that you dreamt in the night was more real than your physical, or like the complacent existence that I had built for myself, trying to control everything with my mind and still being really, like losing kind of the life force from it, because I was trying to box everything in and control everything. And then like just having that presence, that well, the spirit or some source energy or that vantage point shifted to kind of that something else is guiding us, something else, or maybe we are a part of that energy and another, yeah, higher self, whatever way you frame it. But like that kind of experience is, yeah, very powerful.
Well,
And
and
of
I sense
course,
in what you're saying too, like the key I think to this question you're asking about, like kind of how did you know or how did you have a perspective change? To me, it's about that felt sense, the difference in how it feels to be all the things you just said, the tunnel vision and how that feels. And then with that dream, it sounds to me like that it was really, well, I mean, in my personal opinion, is that clearly there was whatever was involved to shift your perspective through the dream. Like that's how that was gonna access you apparently. But the feeling you had to be this sort of more of this embodied shift in order to kind of
yeah.
understand. Does that make sense? Is that kind of what happened for you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the power of dreams, and or any kind of experience where we have that experience. That's an embodied thing. We can actually feel existence in a new way. So in a way, it's maybe beyond just a perspective in a mental level, and it's that felt sense of just feeling life in a different way, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually the key. That's the switch is we can know so many things and they're helpful. Like your question about knowledge that we've talked about, like the view of knowledge. So knowledge is so helpful, and it is not always the doorway, but for some people, it's the doorway to start to understand what are the possibilities for me or for life or for reality. And then it's this process of living the knowledge. Uh, so bringing that knowledge into that more of that pheasant felt sense presence sensation, and that's when I feel like there's a little bit more of that grounded knowing that then you can start to, however you want to use it, for your own life, for sharing with others, for whatever. Since I do believe that everybody has their own unique path, and it's whatever it is for them that they now know.
Yeah. Yeah, with knowledge, it's interesting because I also felt like I lived for the most part a lot in my mind and in some other, not really in my body. And that was then connected for me in my kind of awakening process was really a lot about coming back to the physical, coming back to the body. And even when I thought I was doing that, it was many years when I realized I haven't really integrated a lot. I've just read more and more and more, and because I was then the door open to take in more. And I think it's fine. These processes go in different ways for different people. I had that
Mhm.
mental level really available to me and conceptualizing, and I was just reading and reading and reading. But then came a time like of a few years where it's like, okay, well, now it's all kind of empty hanging around here. Now it's the time to be just present in my body. And that can be quite challenging if you haven't learned to do that your whole life. Or how have you experienced that kind of the two sides of, have you had it like a natural sense of integrating or getting into your body, or have you also experienced a bit being outside of the body, or what's your experience with this?
So it's kind of like my own personal running joke with the universe about my spiritual awakening, because it was really harsh, actually. But and so I can describe a little of it, because that is how I started to understand
Yeah.
actual embodiment. But because I was so much in my head, and speaking of Gene Keys, that is very prevalent in my chart. That is one of the biggest things that I need to overcome, is being
Mm.
so attached and up into this thinking mind, and a quick thinking mind that I have. So it's even harder sometimes because it moves fast. And so the spiritual awakening, well, it pretty much like brought me down to my knees. And what happened was is that, and I still of course don't fully understand everything that was happening to me at the moment, but I was at an Eckhart Tolle retreat in California, because he was one teacher that I really like connected with and kind of understood what he was saying. And so on the way home from the retreat, it was like 5 days, I was on the plane. Now, at the retreat, mind you, I was in the presence of him, and he for sure embodies this masterful energy.
Mm.
And so everybody's touched by it. You can't not be. And you're in this different state of being, which I didn't realize at the time, but then it was very obvious when I left. And so something energetic, I think, was going on there. And on the plane, all of a sudden, I started having this, and this was a very smooth plane ride, I must say. So I had this explosion of burning in my chest, like fire. This all, it was like this swirling. It was the hottest heat you could ever imagine. And it, within minutes after the heat started, it started to expand. But then all of a sudden, I got this massive amount of like intense fear. I'd almost say terror, actually. So that was like not enjoyable. But I was like, what is going on? And because of all my work prior, I think that saved me from literally having a nervous breakdown at that moment. And so then this sort of heat and terror and all of that, the terror continued in my body for like 3 years straight. Okay. Like it was the craziest thing. But within that time period, I always say I was graced, and I feel like the universe gave me this other piece for two reasons. I was also then in bliss. So I was in touch with, definitely, whatever anyone wants to call it, but the ultimate feeling of love and bliss that you could ever imagine. But it was at the same time, and I had both were like in the vicinity, I would say, of my body, but obviously it was like some energetic something going on deeper. And then I had an experience, but tenfold that little experience I expressed, like when I had that little detachment in the kitchen. Like I was literally bounced out of what we would normally think of as like normal reality and life. So I had no attachment anymore to like all the human things and the drama things, but at the same time I felt fully human, and I had the terror, and I had the bliss. And this was all going on at once in my body. So you can see I didn't know what was going on. And I was just trying to survive. And and then after years of really just white knuckling it, and trying to live my life like a normal person, like with all the things that were going on, then I was pushing it away because it was very, well, the bliss I wasn't pushing away, don't get me wrong, but the terror part I was like pushing away because it was so horrible, and it wasn't going away. And then I decided, actually, it was almost like it was just I gave up. Now, not giving up in a bad sense, but I just decided, well, I guess I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. And I surrendered fully to this pain. And in that moment of full surrender, I felt a lessening of this intensity. And that was a light bulb moment for me where I went, oh, so am I supposed to be allowing this to be here? Like I didn't understand that before. But when I did that, that was really the beginning of the journey of understanding that about embodiment and how to the felt sense piece, because I that was a felt sense relief with the surrender piece. And then that started my journey of, I could only do it a little bit at a time because it was just too intense, but I started to expand my capacity to hold all of these things that were very painful, but I was able to hold them, and I was able to live. And I just kept increasing my capacity of allowing. So like this felt sense kept expanding. And then I started to recognize that what I was doing was I was embodying my experiences. And then the first thing I started helping people with was the negative self-talk. Like that was literally the first thing, because I started to understand how to help them allow it to be there. And so it just went from there. So that now, like however many years out, that in its I had to do a lot of integration, like you're saying. Like, I mean, it was 10 years. But what that did was it very much like concreted my understanding of what embodiment actually is, how to do it, how to move from all of this stuff into your body, and then what that does for you. And even just coming up with tools. Like I was like, and because I'm the kind of person who's like, okay, well, you can tell me to let go of all this stuff. Thank you very much, but that does not help me. So the question was how, like, and it has to be these tools. And then that's what I spent time developing so that people could actually figure it out without going through 30 years of what I did, which I don't think you have to necessarily.
Sorry, I unmuted there. I wanted to ask then, what was that process of when you were able to expand? Like, I know it can be really hard to describe what's going or what you're doing there, but I'm really curious to hear if you can, like, how did that look, or what is that tool, or yeah.
So, are you asking about like the experience of what it felt like to have all of this capacity, or are you asking about the tool
Yeah, we
itself?
can start there. We can start there with that experience, like with when you had that aha moment of surrendering to it, and then
Yeah.
step by step kind of allowing it. So
Well, one thing is that I am so glad that I actually even get to attempt to describe this because it's like I don't get to talk about this as often as I would like to, just because it's kind of a crazy story, to be honest. Like my husband is kind of like, yeah, okay, no, don't they, like, I don't need to know all that. But it was fascinating. So, the so how people talk about sort of like the inner depth that you have and sort of like how it feels to get in touch with the dimension, literally, that is expansive, that is, of course, it's impossible for me to describe it physically, because it's more about this sensation of like a portal or like a deeper type of dimension is all I can say. And the reason that I can just sense into that is because when you are used to just having your physical body as just like your physical body, like, you're exercising or running, or, you feel the things in your body, physical sensations, like we're familiar with that. And when you start to have this really intense experience of feeling like this intense fear in your body, which everyone's familiar with fear, right? Like you it's like it could be anxiety or it could be whatever it is, you feel it. And everyone can probably connect with maybe times they have joy or times they have this other feeling. So you can connect with this sense of feelings. Everybody kind of can do that. But now, if you take that and you sort of, it's more of this experiential, like bigger version of those things that feels like its own depth. And what was interesting was, so you got the intense fear and then you've got the bliss. And that allowed me to understand that we have the capacity, because I could feel into that, to have really big, like we have a really big capacity to hold multiple things at once within this space of, I mean, to be honest with you, my experience is that you enter in through your heart center. Like, so that's kind of like the portal into that. So you feel the feelings like a similar way you would normally feel them, but that's almost surface level. And then you're having these two opposites. Like, so they feel opposite, like in this expansive felt sense area of your body, or not body, whatever, I can't tell you, at the same exact time. And that in itself, I was like, oh, this is completely interesting, because how could you have that identical times, and how could that be actually feeling kind of in your body yet inwardly deeper? And but this is where the tool comes in, is that I can show people how to sense into both things, not necessarily at the level I'm speaking, but at least at first, how to know when you're connecting to essence, which is getting closer to that bliss feeling, and how to know when you're connecting to sort of the ego created stuff, which is closer to that fear and the things that aren't you feeling. So, like, shifting people between. So that's how I do it with a tool. And so, in order for me, this is what I believe now, in order for me to even come up with that tool, I had to experience this to this very deep, full extent, so that I can know when someone is, how deep they're in using this tool, and like if they're actually energetically what they're touching on, because I can just kind of, I can sense it, but also the words they use, I can tell that, like, where they're at. So that I think, that I believe is a big part of what I'm supposed to be offering the world. And I'm still developing, like all the things about, like, who I'm actually helping, and those types of things. But that in itself, I'm just like, oh, well, that can help with just mindset issues. That can help with, like, there is all the levels that I can use this tool for, depending on where the person is at. So that is sort of describing it, and then, just kind of like showing you what is just a practical tool that came from that experiencing.
Yeah, and I want to tell you that here is the space where you can really share these stories, and it's really fascinating to listen to. Like, I haven't really heard anything quite like that or in that way, and also for that time that you experienced it. And it that with these opposites, or opposites, or how to say it, it's also something, it kind of makes me feel like it's connected to that whole well, it's experience of being beyond these polarities, by being able to learn to hold them both at once, or that kind of paradoxical place of experiencing both sides at once. So that's quite fascinating to hear about, in what way.
Actually, you're describing exactly another aspect of this that I didn't mention, but that's exactly right. Because when you're able to allow, this is where the surrender piece comes in too, but when you're able to allow these sort of, yeah, the dichotomy between these very intense emotions, or whatever you want to call them, I don't even know. But when you're able to experience that, but you're watching at the same time, that is actually was also the key to this part you asked me before, like, when did you know? Sort of like that, like, oh, I get it moment, was because it really permanently established for me. And I'm not saying that I don't get lost on the rabbit hole sometimes with some old, like, triggers or reactions. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, like where I like yell at my husband about something, like that happens. But I'm immediately called back. Like, I immediately notice it. And in general, I am very clear that I'm watching everything around me in my life and what's happening inside of me. I'm pretty detached from ever falling into the trap of that, the rabbit hole, or being attached to the identity of who I thought I was. Like, I'm pretty clear that we're the observer and the awareness, and we're the consciousness and the that one that is experiencing everything and watching it at the same time, and being human, by the way. Like, this happens in the body. So none of this floating above your head, you guys. I'm like, that doesn't, it's fun and everything, but you can go there, but you need to come back into your body and live on earth. And then that's actually how you experience the fullness of who you are and the reality that you're living in here.
Yeah, and something I also remember, you mentioned the body as a portal. It's kind of funny you use those terms, because that's something I've also myself, I kind of view the self as a portal, or just me, and like the body as a portal. And that's another thing that's kind of interesting to compare with the whole paradoxical idea of being beyond the body, or being somewhere but also deeply integrated or deeply in that experience as a human. And from what you described, how that almost feels like it kind of empowered your body with that sense of being able to really like feel in the body when you're talking with someone, and kind of also observing and seeing at the same time where they're at, or what kind of approach they're having, if it's in more of that fear or bliss realm. Or so maybe now is the time to move on to these tools, or maybe even if there's some practical kind of tool you would suggest for someone who wants to practice this expansion, who hasn't experienced this kind of amazing intense experience, but is curious to kind of feel into how is the body as a portal, or how can I hold different sides and kind of experience that.
Yes. So let me think about what would be the most practical. So the first thing I want to say is, if people are unfamiliar with the idea of really being in your body, that's usually the first step that I take people into, is just, and really it can be as simple as, a lot of times, like maybe at the beginning of a session that I have with people, and just to get us all on the same page, that is really about the idea of inhabiting. I want to stress this idea of inhabiting versus being aware of, like, your heart center, for example. So a lot of people say, okay, become aware of your heart center. Some people say, move your eyes down into your heart center, which, could be a way someone accesses. And I want people to first, just breathe. Just breathe first and pay attention, to your lungs expanding. And so you're just settling in. And then when you're just relaxing a little bit, it's good to have a visual sometimes too. So you just envision like a beautiful white light, the center of your chest, and sort of feel into that white light and sense that it's calm, cozy, warm. And you just begin to relax into that space. And when people are settling into this space now, I use the word inhabit. So when you are in this golden white light, inhabit that space as if you are in the middle of the white light, and you're surrounded by this calm, restful space. And you want to see if you can get sort of a felt sense in that area. Like, what does it feel like to be inhabiting just the space of your heart center, the center of your chest? Like, does it feel light, bubbly? Is there a texture? What is the energy you feel there? So everybody's different, but the bottom line is that you first want to just experience how it is to just be in your body. And this is one area that you can practice with. So when then, depending on the person, like when they're now feeling this sense of relaxation and being bodied, like, so I'm not gonna do like the full thing here,
Yeah.
but then the idea is this. Now, like I might say to them, well, this is usually they have something that they're struggling with, and I want them to sense how that feels in their chest. So let's say they are struggling with, actually, I can do a much more simple example. It's really like, so everybody knows their name. So you know your name, and my name's Jeannie, actually. And yeah, that's okay. Everybody says Jeanne, by the way. It's Jeannie. But yes. So if I said to myself, I'm feeling in this, so I'm sitting in the space of my chest, and I say, my name is Tom, you will feel a sense of tension or restriction or constriction. It's something to practice with, because that is not true. And so it gives you this idea of this felt sense of something that's not true and how it feels in your body. And then you can say, my name is Jeannie. And you feel a sense of expansion or, calmness or truth. That's a very simple example of starting to understand how it feels when you are not in the space of either your truth or who you are, or like it could even be thoughts, and when you are connected with your truth. And so this type of thing is exactly what we can continue to expand and work on, depending on what issue they're working on or what their level of awareness is. But connecting into your purpose, you start to feel that more expansive feeling. If you're dealing with some self-doubt or fear or whatever, you feel that restrictive feeling in your body. And so then this is a practice, and this is how people can begin to expand their connection, their understanding. Noticing is the key. It can be practiced. I literally do this almost 24/7 now. Like it, like, oh, is that feeling like, what is that feeling like in my body? I like just automatically do it so that I can, try to be making decisions, or, something feels off. Why? So it's just, in essence, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I want to point out the power of that very simple act, that you just express it and feel how it feels, if it feels true in your body. It's kind of funny you took this example with the name, because I actually experienced, I did something that's called mirror exercises. So that's when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and then you're talking to yourself, or trying to maybe implement some better connection with yourself. And so I was basically just looking at myself in the mirror and saying my name, my full name, which at the time was Minna-Mari Kristiina Helmisaari. And every time I said my name, I felt wrong. It's wrong. It's not my name. And I realized that my middle name, Kristiina, I wasn't born. I was born with Alexandra as my middle name. And then when we moved to Finland from Sweden, where I was born, then I got a different passport in Finland, and I got the name Christina. And then, then eventually that was my name, Minna-Mari Kristina. And then as an adult, I had lived with that name my whole life. But suddenly when I started to connect deeper with myself by just talking to myself in the mirror and just saying my name, I really felt like that tension. It's like, whoa, that's not me. So I went through the process of changing my middle name back to Alexandra, because when I said that in the mirror, I felt like, yeah, that's me. At least this version of me who wants to now continue here. And that's a bit of a side onto a different lane here, but maybe still connected to that sense of your own truth. And when you use your voice, your body, and feel into it, you can really feel that. I would have never maybe felt it in the same way if I hadn't done that exercise and just expressed it.
That is so fascinating. And how, I don't think it's a coincidence that I switched my tool that we were going to practice today. Like, you saw me stop in the middle, and then I'm like, oh no, let's just do the name thing. And so, oh my gosh, I love that so much. Like, this is, I love all this stuff so much. But that is so interesting that you had that experience. Because we do, and I used to do this too, we tended to think that this spiritual connection, or all the things that the mystical world, or all of whatever it is like so far away, and it is not. And there's just like these simple things that help us recognize just these insights, like that you received when you did that. That's super cool.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to really highlight this for people listening, that this is really a powerful tool you can take right away and start using and practicing to just express these things, but express it in a place where you are focused on how it feels to express it. And that's what we often, if we're wrapped up in life and busy and doing things, we don't maybe stop to do that. So that's really valuable. So I'm also glad you shared that tool here for everyone.
Well, I'm interested too in like the mirroring practice that you do, because that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, in the beginning it was just, I was living alone, and I was doing, like, after my awakening, kind of, that started in 2017 about, then I was for many years just focusing on going inwards, because I had realized that my whole approach to my life had been very much like suppressing or ignoring those kind of woo sides, or like a connection with spirit, which had been more natural as a child, more just obvious. And then it had been a very, very much focused on to being this kind of responsible adult and having a job and doing all the things and that whole realm. So my focus in those years when I lived alone was very much like, okay, let's look in, and who am I now actually? And I had been also in many, like, in relationships in my 20s, and trying to more find myself through the reflection of others, which is one way of learning about ourselves. But that was a time when I was, okay, I want to have a time with just being just me, just reflecting into myself and not through another person. And the mirror exercise was a way to do that, where I would look in the mirror and tell that I love myself. And that can be quite painful and eye-opening, because if you do that for every single day and you feel, do I mean it? How does it feel to say that to myself? That tells you a lot about your relationship with yourself. And over time, I got to a place where I did feel it, I did mean it, but there were times when it felt really hard, really tough. And that's one of those things for me. I think in my life, a deep purpose for me is my connection with myself, which is something I can then show an example of these processes, or I can then guide others into or with their connection with themselves, or that sense of self. Of course, we are multidimensional beings, but we also have like this very specific version of us, or this human being here that we relate to, or we inhabit, as you expressed. And so that mirror exercise was a central part, and is something that I notice falls away when I also get more swept into the daily kind of. I usually do it in the evening, that at the end of the day I would look in the mirror and just kind of acknowledge myself or see myself. But it has fallen away a bit, because now I have shifted more to maybe a bit similarly as you did with this kind of white ball, that every morning instead I do a kind of meditation where I tune in and I feel that connection, which is that I'm part of that light or that source, and I kind of feel the connections to my family and relationships, and just kind of tune in, and then go up or beyond into connecting with the source or all, and kind of feel myself blending into it. And through that activity, the mirror has lost its role a bit, because already that then it has expanded or melted into a different form in a different way. But in the beginning, it helped to have that concrete, because I really needed to look at myself and like have that more concrete of a mirror. So that can be for people listening. How do you feel? Like, what is it you would need in this moment for your connection? Do you feel like you want to explore that feeling of the light and connecting to that? Or do you more feel like, no, I actually just want to look myself in the eye and relate through the mirror? So that can also be a tip for you who are listening to this now. So.
I love that so much, because it also shows how when we do a practice that we're connected with, like that we want to do or works for us, that you do progress when you've reached the point where your goal, you really were like, okay, I want to be able to connect with myself and feel good about it, in essence. And so then you did that, and now that is so interesting. And like now there's something else that is what you want to do in order to connect with. Yeah, like, so maybe it was like, yeah, it was like you first, which is very important, actually. You can't really do this other work, which probably is why I just try to get people like in their body, because you can't do the surrender or the allowing work. You can't do some of this other work very well if you don't do some of this fundamental stuff first. So like, yeah, connecting with yourself first before you can start to expand your awareness, because you need to be grounded in your truth, where you're not really like, swayed too much outside of it. So there's that grounded strength. And then you get to start to do whatever people want to do. I mean, there's so many options. But you know what else you also reminded me of too? Because the other part of being in the body, there's a woman, Judith Blackstone, who not that many people have heard of her when I've mentioned this before, but her work has been very helpful. So like people can go look her up too. And her work is about inhabiting the body. That's literally where I got the term from. But she has all of these meditations that really help you get into your body, because and I now experience this, but she calls it fundamental consciousness, meaning that's the pervasive, underlying, universal, divine truth, actual consciousness, the stuff of consciousness that our bodies have. I mean, because now if we start talking about energy and, science and all that, right? But we can, by being in our body fully, we actually can touch into this fundamental consciousness, which of source spirit, while expanding outside. So we sense our solidness here, and we can sense the energy around us. That's a very good practice as well, is to first do some of these meditations she's offering. And she has so many, they're great. And sometimes I use them to go to sleep. So this is another advantage. Like, you're inhabiting like from your feet, and you start to go all the way up, and you're asleep before you know it. Um, so this is something I would also recommend for people to start to see how it is to be fully in their body, and then they can start to expand their awareness even more.
Yeah, that's something I also arrived at, that there is also with the body that I started kind of creating a root to the earth or an anchor, like kind of seeing the body as an extension of the earth, or that we are connected or related. And that was something I started doing when I was looking into energy work. And I was often overwhelmed after the workday and being in so many different like students and colleagues' energies. And then it was, yeah, very valuable to learn just energy work and feeling those energies at the end of the day, and grounding and centering and creating that root to the earth, and then kind of using that energy, the power of the earth, to be more rooted or anchored into this kind of human body and existence here. And so that's a similar practice, perhaps.
Yes.
I haven't, yeah.
I think that is extremely important, because we are here on Earth. So we actually are supposed to be, connected to nature and grounded into the earth. And that is, so it's like, it's literally, yes, it's about, in order for you, the portal idea, in order for you to be able to tap into some of the other things you might want to tap into, you first need to be, you don't have to be, this doesn't have to be 100%. I just want everybody to realize that nobody has to be perfect here, but emphasizing the being grounded into the earth, feeling solid and strong and supported, and in your body. And from there, doing this other work, that to me is where you're going to get the most results, the most understandings, and frankly, it's easier, actually.
Yeah, it's it's like if you're firmly anchored into some into the solid ground, that also makes it easier to go beyond or further away. That's how I experienced it. And maybe also an aspect of it was that when I started looking inwards, I realized I was also terrified to look inwards or connect with something beyond, or actually accepting that I feel there is something more than just this mundane or physical or non-spiritual anymore. It's hard for me to connect to that idea now that I really feel that connection. But back then, where I started looking inwards, I was quite scared. And then it can be something that can help you kind of anchor and make you feel safe, to remind yourself that you're being carried all the time by the earth, and you have that kind of as a rooting primary connection. And then made it so that I was less afraid to then also go inwards or connect with spiritual or realms or imagination or these non-physical, or yeah, what to
And
call it. It's always, yeah.
well, and what's really important about what you just said too, I think, is that, again, we're doing both. We're here as humans, and we're also spiritual beings. But the whole purpose too is to learn the aspects of you're supposed to be a little kid, and then you have these experiences, and then that might affect you, and you're supposed to create some protective behaviors, which is kind of like the ego, and that's all good and that's all natural. And the fear is when our inner self or spiritual self is more ready to come to the forefront, but the person that we thought we were is afraid, because it's supposed to keep you safe, and so it's going to put up these roadblocks, mostly of fear, because it's supposed to, and so it's just doing its job. And so I would just also just invite people to look at this fear as just a normal thing, that it's just trying to protect you, but really you can allow it. And the like little bits of allowing it will then keep showing you that it's safer, that it's safe to do this, and it's safer to connect to who you really are. And I think that's important, because the fear is very real. I mean, it's real for people and for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, it serves its purpose, and it's something that helped me was like the approach of gentleness that I also learned in the Gene Keys approach of allowing our, well, fear that's often expressing as these different shadow behaviors, and that's a very normal part of being human, and we have all this whole range of ways to experience, and it's a part of the whole, and it's nothing to push aside or suppress, or nothing that's less sacred. It's a part of all that's sacred, or life as a whole. And that's also helped me to, I guess, earlier versions of some kind of shadow work or looking inwards was maybe a bit too much judging that shadow side. And then later, with through the Gene Keys, I found this more gentle approaches, like, actually those sides, like fear or whatever, those sides of me, they are really trying to tell me something, or they provide information. They can bring something valuable, or maybe they provide the seed for really learning to do something in a different way, or there's even energy there you can tap into when you can hold it and look at it or look
Mhm.
into it. And you can't really look into it if you have to just push it or suppress it right away. So that's the challenge of then learning how to actually kind of sit with it and be with it, with the
Right.
fear.
And yeah, and no one said that this is enjoyable to embrace the fear. Like, no, it's not. But the things you're describing, they literally is your pathway in. When you have recognition of these shadows, or people could call them their inner wounds, or whatever words you want to use, but the things that we struggle with, facing, or some behavior that we've been doing that is not productive with our relationship, or however these things show up as like kind of patterns and repeating patterns. When we do actually go, oh, let me just relax and look at that, even though it's super uncomfortable and I don't like it. But being gentle to know that the more you relax and allow, the more that you look into it, the more healing happens. And that's the whole point of them. Because if you didn't have it, like, I'm sure there's some people on this earth, and fine, that their life path is to not have to do that. Like, maybe their life path this time is to literally just be living in sort of ignorance and have fun and do the things and not even have to look at it. That might be why they're here this time. That's how I believe. And then great. But if you start to notice these things, like the shadows and all that, that is like going, hey, pay attention to me. Because if you pay attention to me, you're going to probably be able to resolve. Well, no, you will be able to resolve what has been frustrating, upsetting, blocking you, hurt, painful, whatever words you want to use. That's like yeah, and then not beating yourself up that you just like did something wrong again. Like you have to allow yourself some grace, I mean, because that is the point.
Yeah, that's how I see it, that we're, at least, yeah, as you say, there are many different people. Everyone can have their own purpose and process, and who knows. But for me, I've really arrived at a place that it's a lot about learning for me, and through those, that's how we really learn on a deep level. And I guess that's why I have this whole podcast, is like I want to like expand and learn through it, through rambling or inviting people such as you to share more perspectives and lenses and stories into it. So that is a very central part of it all for me, with the learning.
I
And
think I I love that so much because what you're doing here is so supportive for people, because when haven't we just heard someone say one thing that we didn't even expect, or a different perspective or a way of describing, where that was one of our learnings and our ahas, where we're like, oh, I never heard someone say it like that. And like, it's so important that people hear different words and like how people language this, because everybody is unique. And so just the more we just keep, yeah, like have conversations and talk about this stuff, I think that's just so valuable. So I love that you're doing this, because it's just so helpful to so many people to hear things in different ways.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I also think if we connect back to the whole idea or what we've been talking around, that we both seem to land a bit in a similar place of being a part of this source or spirit, and then we are our own unique human beings that are kind of our own expressions of that energy. Then it makes sense that we're here, we can share the expression the way that it comes out through me, through you, and we can be in conversation. That makes it really fun to be in this human life and kind of share and engage. And it's like previously I've had a lot of nervousness to actually share my voice. I think many people can relate. And when you're more stuck in that wounded place, or that insecure place of, if you don't feel you have a connection to it all, it's easier to feel like it's me that's putting just myself out there. And on some level that's also true, I'm not denying that. But I noticed for myself, if I really feel into that feeling that, well, if we're all kind of connected, part of that same, then we're anyway connected. So it's just fun to be this human with this expression and kind of take a part in that game. But I couldn't really do it until I felt that in a deeper level, or at least it supported me. I'm sure it can be done, and you can still express and play, no matter what kind of uh, perspective you have. But for me, that was something that really helped and felt supportive.
Well, I mean, the story I've told you today, I mean, it took me 13 years to really be able to express and feel comfortable. I mean, I guess I should say a little less, but it took a heck of a long time for me. I did not even tell my husband anything happened to me on that plane for one full year. I didn't tell
Mm.
anyone because I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't, well, first of all, I didn't understand it, but it took a lot of time for me to do this piece of work of healing, of yeah, like all the things we talked about. Like now I'm very comfortable talking about it because it's my story and it actually happened. It's the truth and it's my experience, and now this is how I can help people. But this was not like, oh yeah, I just started being comfortable. Like I felt doubt, and I second guessed my voice, and I didn't, I was afraid to tell my truth. And so all of those things I went through. And I do think that is completely normal too. Like now that I'm where I'm at, I'm just like, well, of course. like, not, there's not everybody who, like, my good friends are, at least now they're just like, oh, that's just Jeannie talking about that spiritual stuff again, like, like, but they don't even, a lot of them, that's not their world. So, so
Mm.
even overcoming this sense of, oh, I'm going to tell this truth because it's going to help other people, took a long time to get to, because, like, of the real world and my friends and, relationships. And so yeah, I agree. Like, there has to just be a process to just, you have to do it scared at first a little bit. And then you just keep creeping into feeling, I think, like, now I'm at the point where, like, this is super fun, people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's such a good point, and something I'm sure many people can relate to, that feeling of being afraid to express your truth, or feeling that your experience are too weird, or did it happen, or being doubtful. And I had many years of really living in this very private place of having those experiences of that kind of awakening and looking inwards, but it was all very much just in my own kind of realm, just with myself. And now, just in the few past years, that I've started to, like, okay, I feel like the pull to start letting it out or sharing. And it's maybe also things a bit shifted in the world, or the energy is shifting, or can feel something of that, that's more, feels more supportive to it. And that can be a part of it too. But that's also, maybe there's also a place for gentleness and kind of respecting where you are in your process. And yeah, again, listening into that, what's your truth in the moment. Because on some level, there was also a beauty in having that kind of silent private place just for myself, just to be in the experience. And that's something I can sometimes feel even these days, that isn't like, what's the place that I kind of maybe want to keep just for myself, or when you do like a ritual or these kinds of things that just have their own energy and don't need to be shared. And what are the things I feel like, this is valuable, this I really want to share onwards to others, and still trying to kind of find, or I'm doing that balancing act, or and I don't know exactly, but that's something that's interesting to sometimes contemplate around, like the value that maybe silence holds at times. Of course, silence can also turn oppressive if you feel that pull to, that you need to express something. Then that's the next step. So that's, has many sides, as everything does.
I love that too. And I do believe that this is where we really, really do need to understand how everybody is 100% unique. And so that you don't compare yourself, because that you can't. Everybody's supposed to be doing exactly what they're doing in the way that they're doing it, in at completely 100%. There's no wrong timing. And another thing that Eckhart Tolle said that really helped me once was, he said, look, we don't know what, the whole scheme of things. There could be someone, and I described this with the person who's maybe just like living in, oh, this is just my life, and they're happy. But there's also people whose sole purpose is to just maybe raise their own vibration, and not shit, and that they're not putting it out into the world, because just that in itself helps everybody. And that was super helpful for me, because I've always been kind of like a, high achiever person, like, who feels like, oh, I got to do all this stuff. And while part of that is true, like, now, it made me give myself a break, because I'm like, wait a second, I'm not 100% sure right now, like, what's going on. And how do I know that I'm not this person who, like Eckhart said, is just supposed to just work on themselves and expand their connection to the divine, and, like, tend their garden for the rest of their life? There are people that are supposed to be doing that. And so this is another that you're bringing up now. I think it's a really important point, is to be very, very graceful and gentle with yourself, because the second you judge what's happening, that's your mind. It's not. There's no spiritual judgment. Everything's going the way it's supposed to go. So I think that's another really good tool for people that if you're just like judging your progress here, that's just your ego trying to protect you, and that's just your mind. That is not your spiritual self.
Yeah, there's no pressure from that spiritual self, no judgment. It's just curious to explore whatever way your life flows out and what's true for you. And yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel it's starting to wrap up, but I'm curious to hear if you have something more you really feel like came up or you want to share or.
I feel like that actually the points that we've been making at the end of this, really about the no judgment piece and just being graceful with yourself, I think that that's one of the hardest things for us to do. We get impatient, we want to grow, and then we judge that we're not moving fast enough. And that's one of my gene keys too, by the way, is patience and impatience. So that's probably the point that I would emphasize the most right now, is to just continually bring yourself back into just grace, gentleness, compassion for yourself. And, sometimes the word patience people don't like because it's like, well, I don't have patience, but truly it's about just trusting and being graceful, even when you push yourself too much. Because the more you can relax and allow, actually, this is the underlying point of everything, actually. The more you can just allow things to be there exactly as they are, every single thing, inner, outer, non-resistance, and practice that, then that's the key. And then things will unfold. And I don't want to say the word faster, but they will be allowed to come out in, like, actually more fully, because you're not resisting things, so I want to say it like that. So that's the point that I would emphasize most, is just notice and allow everything to be exactly as it is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it includes maybe sometimes even allowing that resistance or that feeling of resistance and sitting with that, which is again a bit paradoxical, but a part of that. And then how I see everything is a part of this flow or this unfolding where it will shift states into a new form, and then if we're able to allow it and let it do so, then things will shift more fully.
Yep.
So very
Yep.
wise words.
Allowing the resistance is the hardest, but is actually the most important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for meeting with me here. And in ending, I want to also take a moment to share what do you have going on, or where do you want people to connect with you? And yeah,
Yes,
like that.
I'm doing what I call like a reconnection call, actually, right now, where it's just a 30-minute free call where people can, um, like, if they're kind of thinking, is this all there is? Like, so if you're somebody maybe you're somebody who has been doing all the right things in your life, and you've been, um, but you're coming up against this sense of like, wait a second, like what's missing, and you need some guidance, or um, that reconnection call, I'm just helping people kind of identify, the puzzle piece and where they're at, and then like maybe a path or a tool that would move them in the direction that they'd want to go. So that's what I'm currently doing, is really because I really want to connect with more people, and to yeah, and to hear what they need reconnection with.
And I really want to urge people, someone who feels that, wow, that really resonates or lights something up, really take the chance to do that, because that's how I met with you and we spoke, and that was such a valuable experience. And that was like really helping to get me back into that inner truth or that connection. Oh, it doesn't have to be so complicated. I was creating a lot with my mind. I should do this in this way. And you were really helping me get anchored back into that body. A lot that we have been talking about, like that knowing of, I already know what to do deeper down. And you just kind of helped to clear away like those layers that I had been putting unnecessarily on top there. So I do really encourage people to reach out, and I'll include your links and
Yeah,
everything.
I
And
can send you the link for that call, and
yeah,
yeah.
we'll do that. So yay! Thanks a lot for meeting
Yay.
with me
Yes,
again.
so fun.